Hello, and welcome to another edition of Between the T's, the knowledge sharing program from Texas Bank and Trust. I'm your host, Karen Partee. Today's segment is brought to you by MyOFM. View all of your accounts, track spending, set budgets, and take control of your financial world using TBT's online financial management tool. MyOFM gives you the power to bank the way you want. Visit TBT online at www.texasbankandtrust.com for more information. Now today, we want to discuss one of the most important, yet for many, one of the most difficult steps we all need to take in order to truly take control of our finances. And yes, I'm talking about the most feared word in finances, budgeting. While the topic is a bit uncomfortable, it is vital to have a true understanding of how we're spending our money, as well as a detailed plan of action when preparing for both short-term and long-term financial goals. So joining me today to help us discuss this important topic is Texas Bank and Trust Accounting Assistant, Ms. Rachelle Carter. Welcome, Rachelle. It's an absolute pleasure having you on the program today.
Well, thank you, Karen. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. Now, you work with numbers all day long, and so for you, numbers need to add up. So we're going to dive right into this conversation. I want you to explain for us what an effective budget is and why we cannot ignore this critical first step in sound money management.
Okay, the first thing I want to say is, simply what is a budget?
Okay.
A budget is simply a spending plan. Like you said in the beginning, some people think it's just this dreaded, god-awful thing that they don't want to address, but it's simply a spending plan, and it's a way to determine a balance between what you make and what you spend.
Okay.
And so the reason that's so critical is, we really need to know where our money is going. What are we actually doing with it? What are the expenses? What is our income? And so that's the basics of why we need a budget and why it's so vitally important.
Okay, so if it is so important, why is it so hard for many of us?
It's like anything else. It takes a discipline. It's a mind thing. And many of us just don't want to take the time to actually put in the work. And so we make it hard simply because it's something we're not used to doing.
Do you also think, though, sometimes we might have to make a sacrifice or two if we start looking where the money is actually going?
Exactly. When you sit down and you actually begin to do a budgeting process and you really start to analyze where you're spending your money, sometimes that's a hard reality to face.
Absolutely.
Realizing, okay, I didn't quite realize how much I was spending on eating out for lunch every week or that trip to Starbucks. So sometimes coming face to face with our lifestyle is very, it's a hard reality to face.
Okay. Well, I know many of us have heard or even used the term living paycheck to paycheck. So how do people find themselves here in that particular position? And tell us why or what are the hidden pitfalls of operating your household with that type of practice?
Well, certainly. If you're living paycheck to paycheck and you don't know, first of all, you don't really know how much you're bringing into your household.
Right.
And you don't know how much you're spending. So say you get paid once a month, for instance, like a lot of our teachers do.
Okay.
They get paid once a month. Well, when you get that paycheck at the beginning of the month, and you go out and maybe you go to the grocery store first and you put gas in your car and you go shopping and you do all these things, and then you sit down and decide to pay your mortgage and your utilities, and you realize, wait a minute, I've run out of money. And so you have to actually go back and start saying, okay, where is my money going? Why is it by the time the next paycheck comes around, I'm actually in the hole? Okay. And so that is one of the main pitfalls of it. When you're not conscious about where you're spending your money, well, then you will run out of money, before you've actually taken care of everything that needs to be handled.
Okay, so then let's walk through the actual process of creating a budget. Where do we even begin?
Okay, the first thing that I advise people to do is look at what you did last month. first thing you want to do is actually look at your bank statement. And I know for most people, they never look at their bank statement.
That's true.
And with e-statements now, you don't get them in the mail. People really, they look at the balance on their ATM card and that's what they go with. And so they never really analyze what they've spent their money on.
Okay.
So for me, my suggestion would be the first thing is take last month's statement and write down how much money you actually brought in, and then actually write a detailed list of everything you spent money on. So every time you went out to eat, I would put that in a category. I'd put your utilities in a category. I'd put your household, such as rent or insurance, put them all in a category, add them all up. On one side, you want your income. On the other side, you want your expenses. Because first, you want to see, where am I?
Right.
Secondly, once you know kind of what your spending habits have been, then take a budget, a clean sheet of paper, and write what your income is. Because for most of us, that doesn't vary.
Okay.
We know, every 2 weeks or once a month, this is how much I am going to bring home after taxes. The next step I would do is I write down all of my fixed bills.
Okay.
And what I mean by fixed are those expenses that don't change.
Right.
Your mortgage or your rent, your car payment, if you have any loan payments, those are usually pretty standard for most people.
Okay.
So I write those down. Then I write down my variable expenses. Then I write down what I spend on gas, food, entertainment, until you come to zero. You want your income minus your expenses, and you should come to zero.
Okay.
And like I said, sometimes when you start looking at it, once you start subtracting, you realize that, wait a minute, I actually get to zero before I get to some of the things on the bottom of my list.
Absolutely.
And so then you kind of have to start going back and seeing, okay, where do I need to make adjustments to my spending habits?
Okay, well, you referenced before, going out and getting coffee or eating lunch out. Well, what are some practical tips, though, when we have to look at making cuts, like when you start getting down to zero and you've run out of money before you've run out of expenses? Mm-hmm. How do you really make those tough cuts? Where do you start? How do you suggest to others?
Well, and again, you have to be willing to be honest with yourself and start making a real decision between what is a need and what is a want. Starbucks is a want. McDonald's is a want. Right. Even if it's the dollar menu, it's a want. And so you have to decide, okay, do I really want to be financially fit? Because a budget is a way of being financially fit when it comes to your finances.
Almost like an exercise plan.
Exactly like an exercise plan.
Okay.
And just like an exercise plan, it takes practice.
Right.
And so start with the small things. When you start looking, start with, instead of eating out for lunch every day, maybe I'll treat myself on Friday.
Okay.
Okay, because the average person, the average person spends about $10 a day eating out.
Wow. Okay.
So that's $50 a week.
Absolutely.
On just fast food, and that's just one meal.
Right.
Starbucks, a good, nice tall latte. Well, that's $5.
Right.
So there you've got another $45 basically a week on coffee. So you've just found $100 in your budget that you can now add back to go towards those things that actually need to be handled.
Well, I do know that, because this is really good information and can apply to anyone of any age. But there's a kind of a serious take on budgeting too, because we all know someone who is struggling. I mean, it could be a neighbor, a friend, even a family member, and they could have a lack of income, maybe due to a job loss or a serious illness or even a death, or some unexpected, like a car repair or, just another major illness. I know a lot of times we hear people say, well, I can't create a budget because I'm having to make choices between putting food on the table or paying the light bill.
Exactly.
So help us understand, how can we still create a budget when we're living in crisis mode?
Certainly. First of all, people think that I'm in crisis mode. A budget is something that will have to wait. Right. But the reality is, when you're in crisis mode, that is the exact time you need to create a budget. Okay. Because what you want to do is stop the bleeding. Okay. And what I mean by that is, in crisis mode, you really need to know, where is my money going? Because you need to certainly make every dollar count. Okay. And so in this situation, I still write down my income, because you still need to know, first of all, how much money do I have to work with? Okay. And then secondly, then I start looking at my budget from a priority standpoint. And what I mean by that is, shelter is a priority. Okay. Your food allowance is a priority. Okay. Utilities are a priority. Then comes your transportation. Perhaps your car payment. Maybe you had a nice luxury car when you had 2 incomes, and now you only have 1 income. Okay. So you need to see about cutting your transportation, lowering that car payment. Okay. Maybe you were paying credit card bills, several of them, and simply can't at the moment. Be honest with your creditors and let them know what's going on. Many creditors will work with you. Okay. They will even cut out interest charges, lower your rates, work with you on a fixed payment plan until you can get back on your feet. Okay. And so you need to be honest and say, okay, this is what is happening, and this is what I have to work with. How can I move forward? Okay. And so in a crisis situation, that is critical, that you're actually budgeting your money.
And I know for those who are outside of a crisis, one of the things that I would assume that we haven't talked about that I know you would recommend is budgeting for savings, having that, paying yourself.
Certainly. When we talked about the budget, I talked about writing your income down. Right. And writing your expenses. And of course, your expenses are, again, those things that you have to pay every month. Absolutely. Paying yourself monthly is something that needs to be a priority. Okay. You may want to start small with the percentage. And so what I would do is I would say, okay, this is my monthly bring home income. Okay. I'm going to save 2% of it. Whatever that amount is for your particular budget. That way you don't have a certain amount, because, maybe $50 for me, it's not going to hurt, but $50 for someone else, that's a lot of money. Right. So maybe do it from a percentage standpoint. Okay. I'm going to save 2% of my monthly income. And so when you're writing down on the expenses side of your budget, right after you get through with your housing and your utilities and your car payment, right next, make your savings account a priority.
So it's pretty high up on the priority list.
It's at the top of the priority list. Okay. Because after paying for a place to lay your head, you want to pay yourself. I mean, who wants to work all the time and not have anything for themselves? Absolutely. And so not only are you doing that to kind of make a nest egg for yourself, but it helps for those unexpected rainy day situations that come up. I'll give you a for instance. Most people say that there are 4 major things that are unexpected that will happen to all of us. Okay. It will be something to our car, right, something to our home, our children, or our pets. Yes. In 2016, I had all 4 of these. Oh, wow. Exactly. Living in East Texas, we have weather that's unpredictable. Absolutely. Had a tree fall on top of my roof. That created a hole in the roof that had to be repaired. Absolutely. So even after insurance, you have to come up with the deductible to have the repairs paid. That's unexpected. That's not something on my monthly budget. Absolutely. My son had to have his car, fixed. That's not something you expect. Right. My pet had to go, and we had to have a series of appointments because he got hurt. Right. And there's vet bills and medication.
And we love our pets.
And we love our pets.
Absolutely.
They're our babies.
Absolutely.
And so, these are all things that you can't plan for them. That's the other thing. Right. You cannot plan for the unexpected. as far as what will happen.
And certainly if you have children in the home, you are going to have some unexpected costs.
Goodness. They grow a foot, they've got to have new shoes, or something happens at school. There's always something. And so that savings account, you want to plan for those things that you know will eventually happen. You just don't know when they're going to happen.
Well, this has been excellent information, Rachelle. I thank you so much for joining us today and sharing that, because I know it's going to be beneficial and be able to help many people who were really trying to finally take control of their finances in this new year.
Exactly.
So I appreciate that.
It's a nice 2017 goal to have.
Absolutely, and it's a great start to the year.
Yes.
Well, that's all the time that we do have for this segment of Between the T's. And again, I want to thank our special guest, TBT Accounting Assistant Ms. Rachelle Carter, for joining us today and sharing just a little bit of her knowledge. It was phenomenal. Be sure to join us next time as we continue to explore ways to help you take control of your financial world. Until then, remember, knowledge is power when it's shared between the T's. I'm Karen Partee. Thanks for watching.